What's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kagas with you back on a Monday. That means it's time for Tropics Watch. We hang out every Monday or as needed through hurricane season at 11 o'clock to talk about, you guessed it, the tropics. And the good news is there's not a ton going on. I know there's a giant red blob right in the middle of your screen if you're tuning in on clickorlando.com, the News 6 app, the Pinpoint Weather app, or, of course, the Click Orlando News 6 YouTube page. If you're watching on YouTube, post in the comments. If you find this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share this with your friends. Hit subscribe. All right, now that is out of the way, I know this looks concerning. There's a big red blob pointed towards the Caribbean islands, and there's certainly the opportunity and likelihood that we are going to get a tropical depression at least out of this, but trends are encouraging. Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down a bunch of models, but this is officially Invest 94L. It means area of investigation in the Atlantic. This is 90 through 99, and then it gets that L tag. So if you've always been confused on what the heck an invest is, that's what that means. I'm going to work to turn on some of the comments that are coming in here on the YouTube page so I can bring them on the screen and we can have this conversation. It's one of the things I love most about doing this every Monday or as needed. And thankfully, there hasn't been as much as needed recently. But there it is, Invest 94L on your screen. In terms of the latest spaghetti models, and I'm going to show you the spaghetti plots first, which is right here, and then we're going to get all into it and talk about some of the operational models. We're going to break down the ensembles and then talk about a little bit later on what could happen as we round out October. We are getting close to the end, and hopefully we are going to get to the end unscathed. But welcome to everybody on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, post in the comments where you are tuning in from. This morning, just we're going to turn on my comment thing here. Give me 2 seconds, and then we are going to rock and roll here. Just give me 1 second, trying to walk and chew gum at the same time. All right, there we go, and there we go. All right, we have welcome Wyoming or Florida. That's awesome stuff. Dane, you are way too kind, my friend. Way too kind. Joan, good morning in Florida. Good morning, Chuck. All right, so Kirby asks a great question here. What's with the storms taking the same track every single time? And he's right. If you've been following this hurricane season, most of these storms, at least that have come from the central Atlantic, have curved just before the Northeast Caribbean and then kind of gotten really, really close or impacted Bermuda. And that's because of the steering currents. We've had a weak Bermuda high, and that has kind of lifted everything up and out. And that has been chilling right about here. So these storms get going, and they kind of got just ingested like that. More often than not, that has been pretty good because it has lifted these north. If we would have a stronger one, that means that it would have more of a tendency to push it closer to land or getting into the Caribbean. So with it being weaker, these storms have been able to kind of go up and out rather than being forced into the Caribbean. So that has helped us out in the Caribbean in a sense. Of course, we don't want any big storms in the Caribbean, but it's also been really, really dry for our friends in the Caribbean, if anybody tuning in from some of the islands there. So that's basically what is going on. Hey, George and Deltona, welcome to the live stream. Jacksonville, if you're a Jags fan, congrats yesterday. Good game for you. Vish in Orlando, how you doing? Lori in Altamont Springs, welcome to the live chat. St. Vincent, really hot here, temperatures in the 90s. And Kendall, yeah, it has been terribly hot and terribly dry through most of the Caribbean islands, from the Lesser Antilles all the way into Trinidad and Tobago, the Greater Antilles as well. We can't catch a break on that front. Of course, we don't want anything strong, but we could use a drink of water to help cool us down. Tommy, what's going on, my friend in Melbourne? Good to see you as always. All right, so there were some of the actual models. Keep posting into the comments again, and we will get all into that. We'll try to answer your questions as best as possible. If I don't get to them, I will try to revisit them in the comments. So I want to show you a few models. There were the spaghetti plots again. This is the German Icon. I like to show this one. This one does pretty well. It's a very popular one come hurricane season. And what this shows is Invest 94L becoming at least a depression by the time it gets to the Caribbean islands. This is on Friday, October 20th. The time and date are right at the top of your screen. I'm using tropicaltidbits.com here. Great tool for all my weather friends out there. Note it has it kind of riding through the Northeast Caribbean and then heading towards the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Now, I want to kind of caution here. This looks, just caution how this looks, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page here. This is a very weak system. It's 1,005 millibars, 1,007 millibars, if I could read. It's very, very weak. This would actually be just what the doctor ordered. If the icon comes through here, this would be a depression, maybe a weak tropical storm, so it would give us some nice rain through the Caribbean islands. This is just one model solution. I also want to point out here, if you look toward the top of your screen and my mouse, this is a big dip in the jet stream. This is another cold front here. So this is going to inject more fresh air to the eastern two-thirds of the country. So if you're watching from Florida or if you're watching from any place along the eastern two-thirds of the United States, more fall weather is coming. So this is going to be sustained. This cool down that we are seeing in Florida is going to continue. We're going to warm up a little bit as the week goes on, but more fall weather is coming. So this is not just our 2-day kind of short spurt here with fall, and then we're in and out. It's going to be continuing. All right, so this is the Canadian, and it does have it a little stronger anyway and a little further to the east, so it really ramps it up. That's borderline hurricane status as it moves away from the Caribbean. So it wants to take it interacting with part of the Leeward Islands. That's going to be on Friday into Saturday morning, and then up and out as a strong system. There is that cold front that protects, for the most part, Bermuda. Here is Bermuda right in here. And then we kind of go up and out, and it lifts into the North Atlantic. And then there is that big chunk of high pressure that builds in the southeast corner of the United States. Also, notice here, let's take this further out, some of the GFS ensembles, which I will get to in just one second. If you've been watching this channel, or if you've been following us on Tropics Watch on clickorlando.com or the Pinpoint Weather app, Pinpoint News app, all of the above, we've been highlighting the potential for some development late in the month of October in the Western Caribbean. We'll make that transition out of Invest 94L to this. We still have some systems cranking out here in the Pacific, but notice the Canadian also on board with a weak little system toward Central America, toward Nicaragua, toward Honduras, toward Costa Rica maybe. As we get towards October 23rd, October 24th timeframe, that's in the realm of possibilities. We highlighted this about 2 weeks ago, that because of the Madden-Julian oscillation crossing from the Pacific, which spawned 2 hurricanes out there, or 2 at least tropical systems. I don't think the second one was a hurricane. We would start to get increased thunderstorm activity in the Western Caribbean or Gulf of Mexico. We had increased thunderstorms through Florida last week. Of course, that brought us some tornadoes, unfortunately. And now it looks like we might be able to latch on to something else, maybe potentially named storm here as we round out October. So that's going to be something to watch. Back to 94L real quick. The Euro doesn't do anything with it. I mean, that would be the best news of all. I mean, here it is, your little moisture surge coming into the Lesser Antilles, coming toward Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, but it never wraps it up. It never develops it. That would be awesome to give us some great rain without really doing anything. It's also worth noting that the European does have a little moisture surge here, and there's that tropical system on the Pacific side. So we're going to watch it. We're going to wait to see if anything develops for the Western Caribbean. With all likelihood, again, it's looking more and more likely, and the trend has to be for 94L as it bounced back and forth from that long-range thing back to our next possible depression as we take a look at the ensembles. Now, there's good agreement here that we are going to get this to curve away from the United States. What we're looking at here are these different colors here. On your screen to the right, you can kind of see my crosshairs up to the top. I have the pressures cropped out. But the brighter the peach color here, the higher the pressure. So we have a nice chunk of high pressure right here kind of blocking 94L from coming in to the United States. And we have the Bermuda Azores high pushing closer to the Azores which is also helping to lift this up. So it's a pretty good certainty that this stays away from the Turks and Caicos, and this stays away from the Bahamas, and especially the southeast corner of the United States. We're going to watch, though, in case there are any shenanigans, if this comes a little further west than modeled, maybe again for the Turks and Caicos. I think that's as far west as this thing can go. But in all likelihood, we're watching just for the extreme northeast Caribbean, and then for this thing to go up and out, maybe getting pretty strong here as it lifts away from the island. So again, I want to be clear about that. Not really expecting crazy impacts with the islands at this point. So I want to show you this other, that was the European ensemble. The GFS ensembles are more aggressive with taking the storm away. So this is a good thing. Notice here, we have a couple of members that are close to the Leeward Islands, but then bends away. The consensus again, and I showed you that here on the actual model, that purple color here. Let me bring out my trusty arrow on the other computer. This purple color here, that light purple, that is the ensemble mean. So that is taking all of these lines and taking the average of it, what we have right out here, taking it up and away. The one thing I want to point out on this map here is, as we transition to more of the long range, note how many ensemble members start to come online here. This is the GFS again of some tropical development, or at least some weak tropical development closer to Belize or Honduras or Nicaragua. That's going to be towards the end of this period, again, towards the 25th to 24th, 25th, 9 to 10 days away from now. That is right in the time period that we've been highlighting. So again, climatology meets up with the MJO. We are going to be watching that closely for something in Central America as we move into the last week of October. So we're watching that closely for you guys if I have anybody tuning in there. But again, in the short term, it is all about Invest 94L. Just want to check the comments here, see if we have anybody asking any more questions. Let me pull up my chart here. Frank says 55 this morning with a 12-knot wind. Yeah, that breeze certainly lets you know that it was there. If you were watching News 6 Mornings, we were talking about that breeze adding a little bit of insult to injury for us this morning. All right, so the one issue that we always have here, if we get something into the Western Caribbean, I want to show you this. This is called the tropical cyclone heat potential. Now, if those ensembles start to come into fruition, excuse me, where they were closer towards Nicaragua and Honduras. Those ensemble members were coming up right on in through here. The highest opportunity for a system to go a little nuts is going to be a little further north of there. So if we were to get something to develop off the coast of Central America, coast of Nicaragua, coast of Honduras, it would be missing out on most of the fuel unless it gets tugged to the north, which is a common track this time of the year. So we always have to watch it, but the highest fuel is pretty much from Haiti through Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and then right off the coast of Belize toward the Yucatan Peninsula, and then toward western Cuba and into the Florida Straits. That's where the highest potential, and this tropical cyclone heat potential map represents where we not only have extremely warm water, but that depth of the warm water is extremely deep as well. So when those systems are working over the water, we like to see them upwell that cooler water. There's just not a lot of water to upwell with a tropical cyclone. Heat potential is that high. I want to show you the anomalies. Just these are the sea surface temperatures now, where you see the darker oranges and darker reds. This is still where we are a couple degrees Celsius above normal. So we have way, way above normal anomalies here in the Bay of Campeche into the extreme southwest Gulf of Mexico. We have extremely warm waters. It was just a few weeks ago, we were in record territory in the Western Caribbean in terms of sea surface temperature as well. And then the anomalies are still brutal through the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. So we've not had many systems come through here. Again, that is a good thing, of course. But there's also not been a lot to kind of bring up that cooler water. We like that at times, too, especially if we can ping pong and miss land. We obviously like that. All right, so here's where we stand so far this hurricane season. If you were paying attention, we named Sean. Well, the Hurricane Center named Sean. We didn't name Sean. Late last week, it was very weak system. It was barely hanging on a tropical storm and tropical depression status all weekend long. It is officially a remnant low, so Sean is gone. The next named storm of the 2023 hurricane season is going to be Tammy. We'll see if we get Tammy out of Invest 94L. It certainly looks likely. Hopefully it's not until it bends away from the Northeast Caribbean. And again, the trend is to bend away from the Caribbean. So that is a good thing. We're obviously watching that closely. We saw what happened with a couple of these systems. They just kept on going and kept on going and kept on going. It's been a weird year. The weak steering currents, while that is good that it's not forcing these storms into land, it also adds to the uncertainty on where these are going if you have a weak steering flow and just not a lot of data. So again, we're going to be watching that closely as well for our friends in the Caribbean over the next, week to 10 days here. But the next named storm, again, is Tammy. So let's take you further out. I also like to show something called accumulated cyclone energy. What is that? Call it ACE for short. What the deal is, anytime a storm is named, anytime it gets the tropical storm status, it's a metric that is run to kind of calculate the energy used by the storm. It takes into account how long it's been around, how strong the storm is. So the highest generating ACE storm this year was Lee. Got Category 5 and is around for a while. But for the season, you take all the ACE generated by each storm and then add it together. Now, obviously, this has no bearing on if these storms hit land. The good news is most of these have not hit land. It has been a way above average season in terms of named storms and in terms of the energy generated. We've had one nasty storm hit land. That was, of course, Idalia, the Category 3 storm that came ashore toward the Big Bend of Florida. The average is 106.5. Sounds like a radio station. Today's hits, yesterday's favorites. But that is where we stand in terms of the accumulated cyclone energy. We are almost done. We are heading into like the secondary peak of hurricane season, which is right around this time, mid to late October. You get that Central American gyre cranking up. You get the extremely warm waters of the Caribbean. We're in that Western Caribbean season, as we just pointed out. So that is where we would tend to look for that stuff, is in the Western Caribbean. We're almost there. Again, we have about 6 weeks left in the official hurricane season. Although I do have a comment that has caught my eye. Let me bring that up. Frank has asked, does long range indicate anything in December or January as far as developing? That's a great question. I've not looked in terms, for tropically anyway, for something to develop. The one thing I will say about that is the water is going to stay way above normal through fall and through the start of winter. So when you get these big mid-latitude cyclones, as we call them, kind of rolling off the northeast coast, drawing the cold fronts down, there's a higher potential for a late season or early season, if it is January, to develop. So I would not write that out. At the realm of possibilities. The other thing is, I assume that you're watching from Florida, since you mentioned the low 55, and that was right on line with some of our low temperatures today. But if you recall last weekend, and we've talked about this on this channel at length, if you follow this channel, not just for Tropics Watch, but for our daily Florida forecast videos, one of the videos that I did was to talk about what I thought was going to happen this upcoming winter. And then everybody laughs, haha, winter in Florida. But we've already seen a taste of it. And it was with the tornadoes last week. That is 100% driven by this El Nino that we are in. That was a very El Nino-esque pattern. We had a blob of thunderstorms coming on through. It rolled right across and right along that subtropical jet stream. And we had the extra wind shear involved from that subtropical jet that helped to get those tornadoes going. So what I'm anticipating, at least in the warmer range, is it might be hard to get something tropically, like a named storm in the Gulf or in the Southwest Atlantic, because of the increased wind shear kind of ripping it apart tropically. But we might have those higher severe weather events, those higher frequency of the severe weather event, because we have the extra wind shear. So I would look towards the North Atlantic for maybe a late season or early season named storm. But again, I think we're going to be in that kind of severe weather mode And more often than not, we could have some rock and thunderstorms here. Unfortunately, like what we saw late last Thursday across a lot of the Florida Peninsula. So I hope that answers your question. But in terms of the tropics, I've not looked long range into the North Atlantic. But if we're going to continue to roll off these big storms, which, again, is a possibility because El Nino is also known for that. A lot of people on today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Tropics Watch. Again, if you had found this content helpful, if you liked this conversation that we had, hit that subscribe button for me. Hit that thumbs up button, too. I would appreciate that. It really does help us out a lot. And I'd like to be able to give this information, and I like to answer the questions, and I like to have not just me like spewing stuff, but I like to have the conversation. That's why we're on here. This is what we do, to kind of share what I know with questions you may have or input that you may have as well. I love that. Kind of like what Frank was asking. We had a few people talking about long-range stuff and people from the Caribbean that were highlighting about their awful weather. It's been hot and dry. So I want to thank you guys for that as well. Alrighty, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, we get together. We hang out every Monday at 11 o'clock. So next Monday I won't be here. So that's I'll be off next Monday. So I'll have to miss next Tropics Watch Live. But if anything arises, if we do get things to develop and it looks like it's going to impact land, we will certainly be watching that for you and hopping back on here. So if you want to stay updated on the tropics, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching from Florida, post in the comments if you're here from Florida. We do a video update on the Florida forecast from wherever you may be tuning in from. If you're in Miami, we got you covered. If you're in the Panhandle, we got you covered. Certainly, if you're watching from Central Florida, News 6 has you covered when it comes to the weather and news, of course. Hit that subscribe button for me. We would love to have you along for the ride as we kind of track the weather and what could be an active winter, a cool, rainy winter with, like we saw Thursday, severe weather. So hit that subscribe button for me. I appreciate that a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys found this informative. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. And we will catch you next time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Real quick, I have to give a shout out to Four Corners and Daytona Beach. Love you guys too. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate you tuning in. Glad to have my Central Floridians on board. All right, I do this every time. I say bye, and then I'm rambling on for another 10 minutes or so. Thank you guys. Really do appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.